Speaking of money, let's turn to some business news now, and we start with a look at the markets. Asian investors did not follow Wall Street's retreat but pushed higher this Wednesday. Let's take a look at the latest figures. As you can see there, it's green across the board. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong up 1.8%. The Shanghai Composite up almost 1.5%, and the Kospi in Seoul up 0.8%. However, inflation fears and concerns over asset bubbles are having a dampening effect on investor confidence over the progress in the fight against COVID-19. Market analyst at FXTM, Han Tan, gave us his take on the current concerns among investors.
We are seeing signs of potential bubble in some corners of the global financial market. And then also, I think the broader theme is the expectations for the inflation overshoot in the US. And I think that's what markets are contending with. That's what they're challenging the Fed on. And it's whether or not the improving US economy could then eventually force the Fed to ease up on their policy support. I think, long story short, as long as the Fed and other central banks continue rolling out that support for the financial markets that stocks have truly loved since last year, I think we should see continued upside for these risk assets.
Meanwhile, with the bottleneck in logistics over vaccine production that slowed down programs in many countries, China is going all out on its exports, notably to countries in need, particularly those with developing economies. A move that, among other things, could help China save face following repeated accusations that it had bungled the handling of the initial outbreak last year.
From Senegal to Egypt, Cambodia and Pakistan, Chinese vaccines are arriving in all four corners of the world. A huge help to many poorer countries which haven't been able to procure more expensive Western versions in sufficient quantity.
We have the responsibility to implement our own strategies to vaccine the mass immunizations. We just not only take into account the vaccination by ourselves, we should take into account the vaccination of less developed countries.
While it hasn't revealed which, Beijing says it's supplying vaccine aid to 53 countries and exporting to 27, pledging around 10 times more vaccines for foreign consumption than it's using at home. It's approved 4 for general use, and despite pharmaceutical firms releasing little in the way of trial data compared to Western counterparts, the pandemic's urgency is pushing nations in need, including the likes of Serbia and Hungary, to seek solutions wherever they can be found.
We're seeing certainly real-time vaccine diplomacy start to play out with China in the lead in terms of being able to manufacture vaccines within China and make them available to others, largely low and middle income countries around the world.
Nevertheless, such diplomacy, even if not characterized that way by Beijing, will only be as successful as the vaccines are effective. And with lingering doubts over how well they'll act against newer coronavirus variants, China may well have to be a little more transparent over its vaccines production.